Well, hello and welcome to episode 183 of Drink the Movies. I am Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, listeners out there of all, right now, if you go into your computer and pull up your search engine of choice, you type in what are the best comedies of all time, you're going to get an entry on every one of those lists. I guarantee it. And it's celebrating its 50th birthday. Happy birthday, Blazing Saddles.
Indeed. Happy 50th birthday. 50th? Is it 50 years? Oh my gosh.
50
It's
years, yeah.
almost as old as me, or
What?
maybe I'm almost as old as it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's it. And I gotta say, watching it again, it definitely feels like this was 50 years ago that we would
Mm.
have such irreverent, problematic conversations about Blazing Saddles. Yeah, it was a lot more Mel Brooks than I'd ever remembered Mel Brooks films being, I have to say.
Yeah, you could say that it is the most Mel Brooks of the Mel Brooks fame, and yeah, it seemed like a good time to talk about this film, right? It's the 50th anniversary for it. That's great. Mel Brooks won his lifetime achievement kind of Academy Award this year, and you just had the Gene Wilder documentary come out as well. So it's kind of all these things that were coming together, and it kind of spurred us on to talk about Blazing Saddles, which is like I said, it is commonly heralded as one of the greatest comedic films of them all for sure. So, what we're going to do, Michaela, is we're going to need to mix up a cocktail that's going to, inspire us in all the ways that Blazing Saddles has inspired so many comedians along the years. And we're going to do just that. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll grab some chartreuse and we'll be right back to whip up this week's cocktail.
So, Brian, when we were looking for a Blazing Saddles cocktail, I am surprised actually that I found it in Texas, in Austin,
Oh,
of all places.
yeah.
It's amazing.
That's kind of like the old West, maybe. I guess
It's like
Austin's
the
not
new
not a
West.
Western town anymore for sure.
No.
it's the new Silicon Valley. It's very expensive, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of the West. Yeah, and this comes from Austin, right? Trevor Fehrenbach put this cocktail together. I guess in 2016, it was meant to pay homage to Gene Wilder, who had passed away that year, and to also pay homage to this film, Blazing Saddles.
Yeah. It's this is a very interesting cocktail. It's got a lot of really cool stuff in it. If the number one ingredient that I found most compelling was green chartreuse.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really find it anymore. Apparently, I don't understand why. Well, I mean, I do understand why. It was made by monks who just decided too many people were buying it, so they decided to stop making it. I
They
guess.
still make it. They just decided they weren't going to make any more of it than they normally had been. They were not going to heed to the pressures of people wanting more green chartreuse. They say, we're going to
Golly,
make
we
this
want our
amount.
green chartreuse.
They're going to make this amount every year, and people can buy it and then try again next year. Yeah, absolutely. So, green chartreuse is hard to come by. Not impossible to come by. You still see it from time to time. So, if you see a bottle, buy it. But if you can't find it, go ahead and grab yellow chartreuse. It's going to get you in the ballpark. That's what I used. I'm guessing that's what you used too, Michaela.
No, I actually had a bottle of green chartreuse, believe it or
Oh,
not. But I don't have any
okay.
yellow, so that's exciting. Together we make a whole chartreusean person
Oh,
drinking
chartreuse again.
experience. So
Yeah.
I did use it green chartreuse. I think I don't know if it really has that big of a deal impact on the color itself, just because of all the other ingredients that you use.
Yeah.
But it definitely added, I don't know, there's a really fun, I mean, color to it. And chartreuse is a really nice kind of aperitif. Would we call that an aperitif? It's like a
Hmm.
very herbal and like got a very distinct flavor profile. So I was really excited to be able to use it. It's only a quarter of an ounce that we put in this, so it's just enough to give it a hint
Hmm.
of flavor, right?
Of herbaceousness. Yeah, absolutely. Chartreuse is really good. It has these herbal notes, but it's not like bitter like you think of it like a like an Italian you know uh, Amaro or something like that. I mean, it definitely has those bitter notes, but it also has some like sweeter, like some like honey and vanilla like characteristic to it too. So it blends really nicely into cocktails, which is part of the reason why chartreuse has got so popular here with the cocktail bars coming everyone's way, and that apparently agitated the monks. And like I said, they're not going to be making any more of it. So buy it as you're able to on the shelf for sure. But this came together, pretty easy. It wasn't like any like off the wall sort of ingredients that we had to do, kind of. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So let's go ahead and mix one of these up, Michaela. So into a shaker tin with some ice, you're going to go ahead and put in half an ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice, a quarter of an ounce of that chartreuse, green or yellow, whichever you can get your hands on there. 1.5 ounces of tequila. It didn't specify what kind. I used a Reposado tequila, which is pretty much my rule of thumb, unless it specifies silver tequila. 1.5 ounces of that. A quarter ounce of simple syrup, a half an ounce of elderflower liqueur. So go ahead and shake that with your ice, and then you can strain it into a coupe glass or probably like a martini glass, and then go ahead and garnish it with some cherries. So in the recipe, which comes from makemeacocktail.com, put a link to that. Those were the ingredients that it had, but then in the step-by-step instructions, it said to put in a drop or two of habanero tincture, which it didn't have in the ingredient list. So I definitely didn't have that in mind. I did see it later, so when I made a second one, I threw in a drop or two of spiced cherry uh, bitters into it because I didn't have a habanero tincture because it wasn't listed in the ingredients. Did you catch that in time, Michaela? Or
Um, yes, I did, but I couldn't find habaneros, so I made a really strong jalapeno tincture instead. So I tried my best. Habaneros, I don't know. My Publix doesn't like them, and if they do like them,
mm,
they don't like to put them where all the other peppers are. So I did my best. And I gotta say, I preferred it without it, because of
okay,
the elderflower and the tequila. I mean, I have some thoughts about this. First of all, you know how much I love mezcal these days. I would not recommend mezcal in place of tequila here, because it will
yeah,
just completely overpower like everything else that's going on. You don't want that.
too much stuff, yeah.
And I also, it's interesting that you use Reposado. So I use Blanco because that's what I basically use in everything that doesn't give me directions, which is interesting that we've got the difference there. And that added, I think, to the green, like, to the color of it being very, I don't know, it was kind of yellow because of my elderflower liqueur. But the green, I don't know, I made it like a deeper, kind of a darker yellow.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if I don't know how this would taste with reposado. Just because that's got the oak barrel stuff in it, right? Like that's the big difference
Mhm.
between Blanco and Reposado is it's in an oak barrel. I bet that added another dimension without overpowering it the way that the mezcal would.
Yeah, and the Reposado, it's still pretty young, but yeah, it definitely has a little bit more oak characteristics, and it has, a little bit of that deeper color from some age there in the oak barrel up to a year, I believe. Um, yeah, and it came together really, really well. I like the blending of that. Yeah, stay away from a mezcal. That's too much with the chartreuse notes and the elderflower notes and
Mm-hmm.
the smoke. But yeah, tequila in here is really good, and I liked this cocktail a lot. I thought it was really, really nice. It felt very like grown up and sophisticated, like on a level that you don't get a lot of times in your like home cocktail making. So it's nice when we throw one of these together. It just has a little bit kind of different components and characteristics to the party. And I like a little bit more of a bitter cocktail, and this kind of was bitter. On the front, right? So you had the tequila, you had the herbalness of the chartreuse, a little bit bitter, but then on the back end you had the elderflower, it kind of rounded it out really nice. Yeah,
Mm.
this was lovely. I like this one quite a bit. Michaela, and
Yeah.
it's easy to put together. With those ingredients. Once you have those bottles, it's not anything too crazy. I'll have to try it with some habanero tincture. I don't think it would have done much, to be honest, because those are some pretty powerful, uh, liqueurs that are in there. So I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it didn't really do it for me. I was worried that it was going to be very much like a tequila, like a spicy margarita kind of thing, but it wasn't because you use so little. So maybe it would have been fine with habanero. I don't know, versus what I found is jalapeno, but it was not sweet. If you're worried about this drink being sweet, it's really not sweet. You only have a quarter ounce of your simple syrup and half an ounce of your elderflower liqueur. Yeah, it was not. It was very, to me, it was bitter the first couple of sips, almost off-putting, but it rounds out really nicely. And then the cherries at the end. That's always a good thing. They drown in the tequila. You get like a tequila cherry. It's like a
Tequila cherry.
salad for adults. It's great.
There you go. It's great. Absolutely. So that is the Blazing Saddles cocktail. Again, we'll put the link to the makemeacocktail.com where that comes from down in the show notes. So go ahead and mix one of those up. We're going to take a quick break so we can mix up another one of these, and then we're going to be back to chat about a 50th birthday celebration here for Blazing Saddles. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film.
You've got to remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land the common clay of the New West. You know. Morons.
Spoiler warning for Blazing Saddles. If you've not yet seen this film, you've had 50 years. This year, actually, it's 50. It's amazing. It's amazing that it's been this long. Maybe, I don't know. Mel Brooks is like 87 years old or whatever, and he just won his Lifetime Achievement Award about from a director's standpoint, which is really cool. But we're going to talk about all the things Blazing Saddles. So you've had a lot of time to break the fourth wall. You've had a lot of time to see all the comedic things and the musicals things and all the things about Blazing Saddles. So we're going to talk about it. You've been warned. There we go.
That is your spoiler warning, for sure. Yeah, for Blazing Saddles. So as you mentioned, 50th birthday, happy birthday, Blazing Saddles. This was released in 1974, and it was directed by Mel Brooks, of course. This one stars Cleavon Little as Bart, the railroad worker turned sheriff. Gene Wilder is Jim, the Waco Kid, and Harvey Korman is Hedley Lamar, the scheming territorial attorney general. So, Michaela, this was pretty lauded back in the day. It actually made a lot of money, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But it was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Madeline Kahn gets nominated for Supporting Actress, and then it also gets a nomination for Best Film Editing and Best Original Song, Blazing Saddles, by John Morris and Mel Brooks. And so that's pretty impressive. If you think about that, it's also very impressive that Mel Brooks got nominated here for, the original song, right? This is lauded as maybe his most notorious work, but he was also nominated that same year for original screenplay, I believe, for Young Frankenstein. Both of those films came out the same year.
Yeah, which is so neat because one of them is in black and white. It's supposed to be like this old, very like classic rendition of like spoof on Frankenstein, right? Like it's and then this also has very spoof like qualities of like an old Western, like a spaghetti Western of some kind, right? Where it's very nostalgic. It's got that beautiful music and the Blazing Saddles song. I didn't realize that I knew half the words. Without like I just didn't know that it came from this actual film. Spoiler warning or full disclosure, I've never seen Blazing Saddles until this week. So that was interesting, seeing it with brand new eyes and all that entails. But yeah, it won a lot of things. It was nominated for a bunch of stuff. It's been lauded. I mean, it's made it into the National Film Registry as like being culturally significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It has been that. I love the kind of the fact then that also have Young Frankenstein there that came out the same year that also stars Gene Wilder and Madeline Kahn. So wondering like if they were like filming those like side by side since they were both there on set for that. And the movie set does come into play in this film too, which is very much kind of a wink and a nod, I think, at kind of the Hollywood system that Mel Brooks was thumbing his nose at, which is something that Mel Brooks likes to do. So I'm not going to talk about the story here too much, Michaela. It's basically you have to get into the story here. Obviously, we have the Blazing Saddles song there, and we'll see some gentlemen working on the railroad, right? Building the railroad in through town. But bad news, it's coming up on some quicksand. That's not great. So they're going to have to reroute this railroad in through town. The town is called, what's the town called? It's called Rock Ridge, right?
Rock Ridge.
The train is going to have to go through Rock Ridge now, and our territorial attorney general, Hedley Lamar, sees this as a golden opportunity. He says, "Oh, if we can get this railroad through this town, that means that we're going to make a lot of money here. That's going to be pretty good. But we're going to have to get all of the people out of this town for sure. And what's the best way to do that? That's to hire a new sheriff, and the new sheriff is going to be Bart, played by Cleavon Little, who's amazing." In this, Cleavon Little, I believe, won the BAFTA award or was nominated for a BAFTA for like best newcomer. So good, Bart here.
Yeah, truly amazing. The comedic timing is really spot on here. Look, Mel Brooks is known for his kind of fantastical like satire, right? Some of the shots are actually pretty cool as well. You don't know if it's on a stage set. Some some of them definitely are, and they do that. They make a point to show you that they kind of break the fourth wall even at the beginning of the film and showing you kind of what you're looking at. But Cleavon Little does a really great job of like being true to the script, I feel like, in the comedic timing, and him kind of juxtaposed against Jim the Waco Kid in Gene Wilder is pretty perfect in the way that they kind of banter off of each other. When we first meet Jim the Waco Kid in jail, like he's like, he's upside down and he's like, hey, I don't know who I am. Are you the new sheriff? And he's like, yeah, I am the new sheriff. And he's like, okay, well, I'm very confused. Let's have a talk about it. And we kind of learn more about them that way after he kind of gets appointed to be the sheriff of this little town. And it's really cool the way that they kind of play off of each other. But the acting is inspired. I want to say it's very. I think a lot of people want these two, like this relationship between the two, in other films, right? We see a lot of this kind of playing off of each other in a certain way. And I wonder how much of it, if Cleavon and Gene were actually really good friends, like, because it definitely comes through together, especially as we get towards the end of their relationship, right? Through the film.
Yeah, they have a very good on-screen chemistry between the two of them. And there's a particular scene I want to talk about here as we kind of give kind of our highlights of the movie, I guess. So we have our new sheriff in town, right? But Hedley Lamar is not one to settle for this. He sees that things are not going to plan right. He thought, it was going to be easy. You just hire Bart, right? You convince Governor William J. Lee Petamane, I think is his name. That's Mel Brooks is playing in this film, who is awesome. I love the scenes there with the governor there as he's trying to convince him to hire Bart. And he thinks that's going to be all it takes, right? The townspeople are basically going to run out of town because Bart is here, is the new sheriff. But that doesn't seem to happen. And the town is kind of starting to turn a more favorable I guess, on Bart. There is he's able to get him out of trouble, right? He sends this big, huge, like brute of a guy to come terrorize the town. His name's Mongo. He's played by Alex Karras, who eventually kind of comes over and respects Bart because Bart doesn't back down from him. They hire like a whole troop of like unsavourable characters to come in and start terrorizing the town, right? So you see all of these people in line from all of the various sorts of groups of undesirables you might think of there, and you get a fun little standoff with the Waco Kid and Bart there too. And then eventually, this big gang of people are going to come into town, and Bart has to like literally like rally the troops, right? His old friends that are building the railroad and the people from town who come together at the end, which is fantastic because the way to solve this problem, right, is to get all these people who the Waco Kid has deemed to be morons, which is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, for sure, to come together and build this fake Hollywood set of a town for them to destroy instead of the real town, which turns out to be a Hollywood set itself, which is amazing. I love that kind of like double take on this town at the end of the movie is so good. But I love that. I love kind of the I guess like the softening opinions on Bart there through the film as the people become less and less moronic through the film, right? Still hung up on their prejudices for sure, but the relationship with Bart and the townspeople does kind of blossom before Bart rides off into the silver screen sunset, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I thought some of the fantastical like pieces of this that are takeaways, right, where there's a guy like if you were going to have a henchman, right, and you were going to hang people, they're hanging people that are on there. They like there's a dude on a horse. Like how are you actually gonna physically be able to do that? Some of the more fantastical things, like in the middle of the desert there is a jazz band singing, playing a song. It's just that sort of stuff, I think, is what really stands out to me, is what the Mel Brooks kind of comedy does, right? And no other film did it quite the way Blazing Saddles has, where you have this scene, these issues where you have scenes within scenes that are showing you the fourth wall, that are showing you, and you have to really suspend disbelief, and kind of just get on the ride of the movie to be able to enjoy it fully. Once you're able to do that, it's actually really fun. And I think that that's why it made a boatload of money. I mean, the budget for this film was like 2.5 million. The box office was like almost $120 million. And in 1974, that's a ton of money. That is a ton of money. And you got, there was no special effects. I mean, this was not a animated film where they had to add a ton of CGI or anything like that, right? They didn't have any of that. So to be able to have that kind of effect on audiences to where people would go and see it numerous times because it just was so funny to them, and the attention to the detail around some of the points of comedy, I think were really genius.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's one of the things about Mel Brooks as the director, as the writer, as the actor, and things. Kind of his comedicness is to basically paint this picture to make people realize how ridiculous they're being, and that is. Embodied so much. It's my favorite scene of the movie. It's probably the favorite scene of a lot of people in the movie. But you have Jim the Waco Kid, and he's kind of talking to Bart there in the prison, or in the, I don't know, like the
Mm-hmm.
sheriff's office or whatever, right? And he's kind of like leaned in, like into his ear, and he's kind of like whispering like this dialogue into like Bart's ear, and he's talking about, what did you think was going to happen when you showed up, right? All these people are, bigots and racists, all those things, and he's talking about, he's like, they're just, small town people, they're just, from the middle of nowhere, and most importantly, they're all morons, and it's my favorites because right at the end when he's Gene Wilder whispers into Cleavon Little's ear that they're morons, he just has like such this natural like laugh and reaction to it. It felt very much to me like this was like the 10th take, because I just imagine that Wilder was just like shooting off the hip, saying like whatever he wanted, and they just kept cracking up each other up in the scene
Yeah.
like 100 times. And this was like the
Yeah.
most like together he could keep it, because it's so natural the way that he laughs when Gene Wilder says that they're all morons there at the end,
Yeah.
because they are all morons, right? You have a lot of terrible, awful language to use. So, Michaela, this was the first time you've ever seen this. That was probably a little jarring the first time, and maybe by the 100th time, it was still just as jarring for sure. But one of the important things here in the creation of this were that only the bad guys used that language, right? None of the good guys ever did, and that was something that was very important to Mel Brooks. I was reading an article here. So Mel Brooks gets kind of the story right up from Andrew Bergman, who had kind of written the story, and Mel Brooks thinks that it's, original and hilarious, and really wants to make a movie about it. But he takes a look at himself and says, "Can I make a movie like this?" So he actually, called up his pal Richard Pryor and says, "Hey, read this." Richard Pryor says, "Yeah, that's pretty funny." Mel says, "Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to make this?" And Richard Pryor's like, "Well, you can't say things like that, but the bad guys can, because that's what bad guys would say, right? Because they're a bunch of morons." And right on, right on.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I think that this film, it is not, obviously it's not for kids. If you're gonna watch this with a young person, you need to have a lot of different conversations. As you were telling me, your fear was I was gonna like, not go in fully knowing that, and kind of expose my son to some of these things. I think that it's worth having those conversations, number one. But number two, the heart of this film is really very much that you have to come together and put away your thinking and be open-minded enough to be able to dispel of evil in all its forms. That's really it, which is the great story, right? That is amazing. You have to be able to show some of the evilness and some of the ridiculousness, in a way that is still entertaining, because
Mhm.
again, this was 1974. The world was a very different place then than it is today. So to be able to poke fun at its own self, and to be able to also shine a very true light on things that can be improved and should be improved in the world, I think was really, was one of the things that made it so special. But I mean, like, for example, one of the scenes that I loved was Dom DeLuise is like a director, as we're, as this brawl is happening in the middle of this city, the shot pans up and we see the studio, and I don't normally laugh out loud, but I was like, are you kidding me? I said it into the screen, right? I was like, oh my gosh. Because I was not expecting that at all. Nobody had spoiled this for me. So then we are, immediately transformed onto another sound set where Dom DeLuise is directing this like musical number, and he's like mad at the team that keeps falling down, and he can't do it himself. He's falling down. That part I just cracked up so much because I was like, what could they possibly do next? I mean, how is this? And then the brawl just like rips off a wall and everybody's rushing in their Western garb, like beating each other up. And then, all the dancers are getting involved, and it's mayhem, and it's so completely absurd. And again, if you're going to be tied into reality as we know it, it's going to be really hard to maybe watch and enjoy in today's day and age. I mean, the language is really jarring. Some of the things that they're saying and doing is really jarring. But if you're able to go on and take that step and be willing to change your paradigm a little bit, I think that it's well worth your time today. If for nothing else, for the appreciation of what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the stuff with the spillover into Hollywood is great. Like one of the brawlers from the set says something along the lines of, "It's okay that he's there. He's working on a Mel Brooks film." I love that. I love that it eventually gets to the movie theater, right? And Headley is they're like trying to buy a ticket to get in to see the movie that they're making, which is good. He tries to use like a student discount card, which is pretty funny. And then you have the Waco Kid and Bart, turn up there to watch the movie. And
they go in the theater to watch their own movie.
They kick their feet up. They're eating popcorn, and Gene Wilder says, "I hope it's a happy ending. I really love happy endings." And it goes back to to show that, and sees them kind of ride off into the sunset to only like get off the horse and give the horse to the horse wrangler and get into like this town car and drive off set, which is really great. There's another scene that I laughed out loud at. They're at the Rock Ridge like town council meeting, and they have the roster of the people that are on the town council behind the guy that's talking, and they're all Johnson. They're all named Johnson.
Right.
Which
right.
I thought was hilarious. There's so many like little things like that, just like these little like nods to like how ridiculous that people are, right? And people were, and people still continue to be. I love stuff like that in the movie for sure. You have like there's like a whole other kind of like story where they're trying where Headley's trying to have Bart like seduced by this German like singer dancer kind of thing that's being played by Madeline Kahn, Lily Von Stoop there. So you've got that kind of rolling in as well. She got nominated for an Academy Award there for playing that. But this was a pretty big deal, Michaela. As you mentioned, it made a ton of money, right? If you take $2 million and you turn it into like $120 million, that's a pretty good deal. But apparently, even the folks at Warner Brothers were a little squeamish about putting this out, right? So Mel Brooks goes off and he makes this film and he turns it in, and they're like, "What is this?" And they had kind of the same reaction that Mel Brooks had, right? They're like, can we do this? Is it okay to do this? Does it make any sense to you? But apparently one of the vice presidents there at Warner Brothers they were getting ready to pull the plug on it. They were just not going to release it. And he's like, well, let's go ahead and we'll screen it for people, right? See what the reaction is, and then go from there. And people absolutely loved it. And like I said, if you go to Google right now and type in, best comedy films of all time, there's like 100% chance that this is going to be pretty high up that list.
Oh, it is absolutely. And I gotta say, I mean, halfway through the film, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Because I wasn't willing to take it for what it was, right? And so I think for any of our listening audience that didn't heed the spoiler warning and went ahead and listened to us talk about it without seeing it, you should do it. You should give it a shot, but just be prepared that you're really gonna have to be open-minded to what you're seeing, because there are parts that are legitimately hilarious, and there are parts that legitimately make you feel bad, and I think that's probably a good thing.
Mhm.
That it has that effect, and I don't know if that was the point. I think the way we feel about and the different parts that make us feel uncomfortable might have changed in the last 50 years. But I think a film that does both entertain you, makes you feel good, but also really makes you examine yourself, and like certain things that we see in everyday life is what makes films great. And that's probably one of the reasons why this is continuously on the list of, the top, 50 comedies of all time, for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure. And I'm not gonna, dare to say I can, get into Mel Brooks' intent here with this. And obviously the takeaways, 50 years on are a little bit different, but I think that largely they're probably the same. And that yeah, obviously this is a comedy. A lot of it does make you laugh, and some of it does make you feel uncomfortable. And I think in 1974 when this came out, I think that was still true to make you feel uncomfortable or uncomfortable with the fact that it wasn't making you uncomfortable, right? I think it was just kind of like holding a mirror up to
Mm-hmm.
society and seeing, obviously, kind of the true takeaways of it, but also seeing the comedy of it there as well. So that is Blazing Saddles. Michaela, you said this was the first time you watched it. I guess good job. Right? This is, it's on the historical database of films, right? That Congress keeps or whatever. There, I've seen this a couple of times now. I saw it the first time back in college for a film class, which would have been, I don't even want to think about how many years ago that was. It was a long time ago that I saw it, and then rewatched it here again. And like I said, there are times in this when I laughed out loud, and I'm not a big comedy guy. I don't watch a lot of comedies. That doesn't tend to be my favorite kind of movie, but there are parts of this that are just absolutely like brilliant and like head scratchingly so from time to time. So that's it. That's Blazing Saddles. Let us know at home if you have seen Blazing Saddles, what you thought about it. Did you watch it 50 years ago? Did you watch it recently for the celebration? I think it's in some movie theaters right now. If you're listening to this, you can go check it out on the big screen. That would probably be really fun, especially as it spills over into Hollywood, right? Seeing that on a big screen would be pretty cool. So check that out and let us know if you mix up one of the cocktails. You can do that on any of our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to get some bonus content from us, we got hangouts, we got bonus episodes, we do little cocktail chats periodically. You can do that on our Patreon. It's a great way to support the podcast. It's patreon.com/Drink the Movies. And if you want to check out the recipe that we made, check out what we got going on with Drink the Video Games, check out the merch shop. All that stuff can be found at our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. Michaela, they want to make sure that they're staying up to date with what we got coming out. We do 2 drops a week, right? Two things
We
they
do.
should be
We
listening
sure
to.
do. We do. We do 2 drops. We do our lobby bars. They're on Mondays. They're really fun. They're short, sweet, talking about all the movies, all the TV stuff, and a delicious cocktail that's really easy to make. Then we do our deep dives. Those are usually come out on Thursdays. That's not including all of our Patreon stuff that we got going. So you can join us on all of those things. If you're liking what you're hearing, press the subscribe button, because we love connecting with our audiences and talking all things movies and cocktails. But if you're really liking what you're hearing and you want to tell your friends about it, leave us a 5-star review. And in that review, you can talk to us, give us the feedback of movies that we've missed that are 50 years old that we've not seen. Cocktails that you love that we haven't talked about. If there's an ingredient that you're in love with or that you absolutely hate, even, and you want to know how to love it, let us know. That's how you do it. That would be amazing, because the community that we built, we didn't build it. You all built it, and we're just very grateful.
That's right. Everyone comes together to build this community, just like at the end of Blazing Saddles when they come
That's
together
right.
to rebuild the town. So that is going to wrap it up here. Happy birthday, Blazing Saddles. Go check it out if you've never seen it before, and see what all the hoopla is there about this comedy legend. So thank you so much for joining us. We definitely appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
movies.
Movies.
My name's Jim, but most people call me Jim. I
My
mean, it's
favorite,
so stupid, but I can't stop laughing at that line.
my favorite, he holds his right hand up and he's like, oh, it's still like a surgeon. He's like, yeah, too bad I'm left-handed. And he lifts it up and it's like shaken to high heaven. I love it so much.
Ah.